Sorry, it's my fault. It's my fault 'cause I'm just showing up randomly.
All right, I think we got you good and loud now.
All right.
I'll wait till I hear some screaming and then we'll turn it back down.
Yeah, okay.
Or chat screaming, rather. Or maybe it'll just be
Yeah,
angry emoji. I don't know.
it could be. I don't know.
Uh,
I tried to move it so my gaming headset, like all of my gaming gear, is hand-me-downs. Like my PC tower is built from my friends' older gaming components because they are far bigger gamers than I am, and I just needed to get by.
I gotcha. Yeah, I've never really talked to you about video games before, so I don't really know what you're into.
Not a whole lot. Like, well, the majority of my gaming has come and gone, and that was a lot of it in college or right after college. Um, these days, what have I been playing? I just picked up Super Hot again.
Super
um,
hot. Yeah, I've,
I
I've
love
played a little
Super
bit of
Hot,
that.
man. I went through the game and I beat the game and then I beat all of the challenges and all of that jazz. And I was playing it again the other night. Beyond that, I finally got to Arkham Knight, to give you an idea of how up to date I am on my video games.
Oh man, that's totally valid. So I had like a Rip Van Winkle period, I call it in gaming, where like anything that came out between 2005 and like 2012, I don't know anything about. So like I missed all those Batman games.
Yeah, I bought it on a Steam sale, and then I didn't touch it for a very, very long time because I was playing. Um, I played the Division 2, though it's been a long time since I've logged in. And then I had like Overwatch, but it's been a while. I feel like every time I log into Overwatch, there's at least one new character. Like,
That 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 sounds plausible. I feel like every time I like think about Overwatch, there's another character. I've never actually played it myself, so again, I'm not as much as I'm like a streamer. I'm not really up on like the hip games the kids are playing these days.
yeah, exactly, exactly. No, I got Overwatch. I think I got it because Void and Beach were talking about how much they were enjoying it as an evergreen game. So I decided to give it a shot. And I have played with Beach like twice since I bought the game. So, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a lot of video games, and other times I feel like it's just in little binges where I'll get hooked on a specific game and feel like I need to play it until I'm done with it.
So for me, the notion of like an evergreen game kind of like terrifies me because as someone that like really gets absorbed into a game, I kind of need to know in advance that it has an ending, like that I'm not making an
Right.
open-ended commitment.
Right, and I absolutely get that too. I don't know that I'm necessarily somebody that will have a game and this is my game. Like some people will just play Destiny or, I mean, I was definitely a Halo kid for a while, but
Oh, I mean,
yeah,
who wasn't?
exactly, exactly. But it's that idea of liking games that have a definitive end because then I can put it down and move on to something else.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. Actually, on the topic of open-ended commitments, making my smooth faux podcast transition here. Comics, I've kind of backed off on a little bit because they kind of are that same open-ended commitment of like, this story has been going on since 1938 and still hasn't ended. Do I really want to sign up for that in perpetuity for the rest of my life?
Absolutely. I am absolutely the same way. There's a couple books that I will still pick up that are from what they call the big two, Marvel or DC, but for the most part, the comic books I enjoy are independent publishers, stories that either are likely to end or have an ending in sight, even if it's 5 years down the road, which would be 60 issues. Um, it's good to know. Or I go back to old series that are already done or almost over and then say, okay, now I can read this. With the big two, if it's something like, Batman or Wonder Woman, it comes down to story arcs. And there's always going to be some sort of cliffhanger at the end every single time. But the idea being you read through all of a specific creative team. I want to read Mark Waid's run on Daredevil type of thing. And
Right.
he's only on it for so many years and then he moves on and they bring in a new creative team to try and boost sales or or tie into whatever stupid crossover event they're doing. So that's really the way you have to approach those, rather than thinking, I'm going to read Batman.
Yeah.
Let me start at the beginning.
I think I actually have read like the very first issue of Batman and Spider-Man and a couple other of the like long running ones. But yeah, there's really not much point in doing that in 2019.
No. I mean, it can certainly be fun and educational to see, read the newest Batman comic and then read the first two where he's like killing people.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, did he just throw that guy off the top of a building?
Of course, he was a criminal of some sort, we think. Like, they don't really give you a lot of, backstory then. Now, I mean, writers have to be so very careful.
Yeah,
I
mean,
that's the same really with video games as well, in terms of the scripting process and trying to make a story fit together versus, I mean, I guess you have something like Space Invaders. It's pretty straightforward.
That's true for like some types of games. Actually, it's convenient that I happen to be playing Ys 4 right now. So this series, kind of like comic books, started a long time ago, and then late in the process, someone said, we should really have some kind of like character Bible to reference. But the idea didn't come to them until like decades later. So they retconned the whole series.
I feel like a lot of games now make up those Bibles, right? To especially when it's any sort of established universe.
Yeah, so like in this case, this is a remake of Ys 4, and it is the only version of Ys 4. There's 3 games in the Ys series that are called Ys 4. This is the only one that's considered canon. Because they like outsourced the development of the studio that owns the rights to the name, outsourced the development back in the 90s, and then like got the end result, and they said, wait, you married off the main character and had him retire from adventuring? What are we supposed to do now? So then they had to like remake it and retcon the story so that it made sense with all the other games they had planned. And that's happened several times now. So it is a lot like a comic book in a way.
It is. Or it's like like Terminator or Highlander or Halloween, the different film franchises that just every once in a while say, you know what, forget those films. We want to do a sequel to the second movie, even though this is the 6th movie.
Yeah.
And we're going to ignore the other things that happen. And everybody's like, all right, well, in the end, I think maybe video game audiences, and in some cases their film audiences, are the ones that are quicker to forgive. They're like, all right, we're just here to have fun.
Oh, you think the comic book audience is the least forgiving?
That's hard to say because the comic book audience is becoming the movie audience. And then you have diehard TV genre fans, Doctor Who fans, Supernatural fans. So I don't know. I think it certainly has to do with any type of ongoing narrative, though. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't think... Like, there's obviously the people that are angry because, oh, you're remaking Ghostbusters with a female cast, you're ruining my childhood.
Hold on, you're saying there's people that are angry about that, Rob?
Still. Yeah. But I think it's when people get invested in an ongoing story, and then they're emotionally invested, right? Which means if you screw with the story, you screw with their emotions.
I feel like that's such like a fair kind of way to put it, because I feel like it's so easy to be like, oh, people are getting all bent out of shape. That's something that's over something that's made up or not important, when obviously being a jerk about it is a bad move, but it's still like a valid feeling when like you're attached to something and it kind of gets pulled out from under you, or at least you feel like it does, So like in a way I can see where that sentiment comes from, just not the actions that it might spur afterward.
Right. And it's hard because then, like I said, you have now synergy. You have content coming out that is based on pre-existing IP, or pre-existing content. So now you have, like we're talking, Birds of Prey. I'm in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, and there's a Facebook group called Twin Cities Geeks, and somebody threw up the trailer, and some people are like, I'm really excited about this and whatever. And then there's a group of people, myself included, that are like, well, here are the concerns that I have. Most people aren't sure why they're calling the film Birds of Prey, because it very much feels like a Harley Quinn vehicle, or I'm hearing the first part of a trilogy of films that'll be based on Harley Quinn, and she was never a member of the Birds of Prey, right, in the comic books.
So that was something I wanted to ask you about, actually, because I haven't read Birds of Prey since the Gail Simone, like Jim Lee period.
Which is like the really celebrated run is Gail Simone's run on Birds of Prey.
Yeah, and I loved that. And I was like racking my brain today being like, was Harley Quinn in that and I forgot somehow, you know?
No, once the New 52 hit, she was a member of the Suicide Squad for the first time. And I'm trying to remember if it was prior to the New 52 reboot, where she was a member of a trio called the Gotham City Sirens, which was a name that I think was used for animated shorts. I think it might have actually been the name of an episode of the new Adventures of Batman and Robin, or whatever they renamed Batman the Animated Series.
Right, okay.
So whatever Batman Superman Adventures or whatever it was, I think they had a Gotham City Sirens, and then they did a series of really short animated things. And so that was Catwoman, Harley Quinn, and Poison Ivy. And there was a comic book, and I read this comic book, and the art was just, I mean, I could see it being offensive from the point of view of maybe a female fan that's like, does every shot, every drawing, because you're picking a camera angle, does every angle have to be an upward shot from behind them?
Wow, okay. Because I know some people even had issues with some of Jim Lee's art in the Gail Simone run, but it was still kind of... Because, I mean, Jim Lee has that sort of classic comic booky look. Granted, all the characters are like that, but...
No, well, he comes from that Image school of really hip artists in the 90s, and they drew, you know, women with impossible bodies and men with impossible bodies, and that's just the way their art goes. Like, I love Jim Lee's art on, say, All-Star Batman and Robin, but it's definitely understanding, like, here's, you know, we see Vicky Vale getting dressed, which means we have to see her in her underwear. And what do you mean women don't just stand like that in their underwear in the middle of their apartment, posing as though for, you know, a photographer,
yeah,
for a photo shoot or whatever, you know, and it's just part of it. But no, getting back to the Birds of Prey, it was interesting because there were a lot of and I'm sure the thread is still going on Facebook there, because there's always a lot of people in that group that like to get into conversations. And clearly when somebody posted the trailer, they were posting it for conversation and commentary. But then somebody posted saying something like, there's a lot of white men complaining and women of color being ignored, or something weird like that. And I actually looked back through the thread, and I was like, I mean, it was mostly white dudes, or then also white women that were commenting either positively or negatively. But then there were comments on each person's comment, and the discussion was always civil. So it was really weird to see somebody like very quickly jump to the, here we go again, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
at
sometimes.
the same time, I'm sure that's a part of the commentary. You know what I mean? It's one of those, like, you're understanding that that's part of the commentary that's out there because it is the internet, while at the same time it's like, yeah, but if the comics were aimed at a specific demographic, and then that demographic is sharing their opinion on an adaptation of that thing, I don't know. I feel like, you know, if the 50 Shades of Grey movies came out, and it's like, well, there's a lot of white women commenting on this movie thing. Here we go again. It's like, no, that was the target audience for the book.
Right, yeah. And I don't know, that's kind of an interesting thing with this Birds of Prey movie, because really, like, the only character that we see in the trailer is Harley Quinn.
Yeah, I mean, you get glimpses, right? You get glimpses of Black Canary singing on stage.
Oh, I
You
missed
get
that. Okay.
So are we talking about the trailer that came out today?
Yes. So I the only character I picked out, I believe, was Huntress.
Right. So it looked like we had Huntress, who was on a motorcycle. Um, there is an Asian actress somewhere in there that is Cassandra Cain, which I'm really excited to see how they handle that character, because I don't know that Cassandra Cain, who has been both Batgirl and now she's known as Orphan in the comic books and in the some of the animated cartoons. I believe Cassandra Cain is in the Young Justice cartoon on the DC Universe app right now. And yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. Now, Black Canary is African American now.
Oh,
For
really?
this film, I believe. Yes. So
Okay.
you see a woman who is singing on stage, and I think that's the take on the current version of Black Canary, who I think is a punk rock singer, which I love because it fits sort of the, motorcycle, fishnets, kick the crap out of anybody type of character.
Yeah.
And I feel like, as far as a job or whatever, for somebody whose power is their voice, it makes sense and it's empowering. But I don't know a ton. I never read the Gail Simone run. I think I've read maybe some of it, or maybe I read a couple of issues when they rebooted it and Gail Simone came back, but I never read the first run.
So if I remember right, I can't remember if they ever tell you what Black Canary was up to other than beating the crap out of bad guys.
Right.
But kind of like her signature, other than the typical Black Canary just being tough thing, I feel like her quirk was sort of that she was really bad with technology, but not like in a mean way, but just like, she's like, hey, can I borrow your phone? And then like the battery dies like in her hands. Like, it was just kind of like a gag,
And it gives her a better way to bounce off of Barbara Gordon, who, as far as we know, is not in this movie.
Right, that's the other thing I noticed. I was like, there's no Oracle in this.
And that's the huge thing, both for fans of the original comic book, because the Birds of Prey, for those that are unfamiliar, is Batgirl's team, consisting of herself, and originally herself and Black Canary, and then Huntress joins, and then there's other characters that sort of come and go, right? I feel like Hawk from Hawk and Dove might have been a part of the team for a while. There was a character named Starling that was a member of the team at one point in time. But at the core, usually, if I remember right, has always been Barbara Gordon as Oracle, generally, Black Canary, and Huntress.
Yep, that's about how I remember it. Those three, and then occasionally Catwoman, at least in Gail Simone's run, Catwoman and Lady Shiva would show up sometimes.
Oh, cool.
So when I saw an Asian American actress in the trailer, my first thought was Lady Shiva.
Right.
But that would be a pretty obscure character. Granted, we're getting like a Shang-Chi movie soon on the Marvel side, so like, we're digging out characters from all kinds of places to try to up the range of each, respective franchise. So I guess anything's possible.
Right. So again, it's one of those, like, I'm curious to see it. I think I'm gonna go see it in the theater. The reason I wouldn't has nothing to do with it being a female cast, but there's certainly apprehension of you don't seem to be following any sort of source material, which is a huge plus for comic book fans. I think that's part of the reason Marvel has done so well, is they know when to divert from the source material and when not to.
Right.
And how to build meaningful relationships when they do need to divert. Yeah, it's, for me, now the big commentary I made, it was like, I'm also confused as to why this is Birds of Prey. Supposedly the next film in whatever this Harley Quinn trilogy is going to be Gotham City Sirens. So I am looking forward to that. I'm really curious to see how they handle Cassandra Cain. But my big thing, and this is me as a film geek, as somebody who went to college for film studies, is the color palette really worries me in the trailer.
It's very brightly lit, isn't it? Like a lot of
it's
daytime shots and stuff.
I see, but that's not what I'm remembering. I'm remembering things that are very blue and gray because they're shooting day for night, or they're shooting it in front of a green screen, and I'm worried it's going to look too much like Suicide Squad, which looked like mud.
Ah,
Because it didn't have the color palette of, say, a Marvel film. Marvel's movies are big, bright, and colorful. The DC movies across the board use their color grading to remove a lot of the saturation. Like if you go and you watch, I think people will take clips from Justice League or from Batman v Superman and add some of the color back in and pump up the saturation a little bit and add in like the red. I think it's they pull some of the red out so everything looks a little blue and dim. It looks so much brighter and happier in like a Superman movie.
which you're saying brighter and happier than a Superman movie? That's such like a weird thing to think about because normally when you think bright and happy, you think Superman compared to a lot of other DC characters.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's they take what it actually looked like in Batman v Superman, the actual film, and they turned it into what we want a Superman film to look like by making it colorful.
Okay,
so
I
I'm
gotcha.
saying that the DC films in general are a bit desaturated, and in my opinion, don't look good or they don't look appropriate. A Batman movie can look like that. Right? A Batman film can look desaturated. It can look, noir. But Wonder Woman looked beautiful.
Yes, I'm definitely with you there.
Compare the way that Wonder Woman looks in Wonder Woman to the way she looks in the Justice League movie, just in terms of color. And you'll see a big difference in terms of brightness and saturation. And it looks like this, and now people were correcting me saying that when Harley Quinn was on screen, it looked like everything was much more brightly colored. But I only watched the trailer once, and my takeaway was, wow, this seems very, like, it looks like it has the same color palette as Justice League or Suicide Squad. That's too bad. The whole film should be this crazy, bright, colorful thing, because that's the way Harley sees the world. I've read a good number of Harley Quinn comics. My favorite run is by far, I think, the one that was written by Paul Dini, the guy who created Harley Quinn and wrote a lot of
animated series. Yeah.
Yeah, and it showed the world, and then it showed the world through her eyes, and she saw it as a cartoon. So when she whaps somebody on the head with a giant mallet, she's thinking of it like Tom hitting Jerry with a mallet. They're going to be fine. She's not recognizing that she's actually murdering people. And that was sort of his view into her psychosis.
Interesting. Just to transition real quick, just so people watching the gameplay are trying to figure out what I'm doing. I am very lost in this game right now, as every route I've found on the map is blocked by poison gas, and I had hoped that the Governor General there would reward me with a poison gas absorbing item rather than an item that just helps me get money. Which only in a video game is that a problem. But
Is this your first time through this game?
Yeah, that's kind of my my thing that I do. I do games I've never played before, so like the audience and I are both kind of like, what the heck is going on together? And I'm not someone that replays games very much, so I'm more engaged if it's a game I haven't played. So then I feel like I can do a better stream, for the audience too, because I'm more engaged. But yeah, I have no idea what's going on. But I'm so fascinated by what we're talking about here with Birds of Prey that I'm like, well, I'll just wander around and kill some stuff and get some XP in the meantime. But yeah, the film studies part of it, yeah, that's so with the color palette and all that. So I have to confess, as much as I'm like a Birds of Prey fan, I was very curious to see this trailer. So I saw it when Katie, one of our podcasters here on the Geek to Geek Media Network, posted it in our Slack channel. That's when I opened it up. So I was leaving work, and I on my way home from work, I have to walk through this kind of dark tunnel. So I'm like looking at it on my phone as I'm walking through this tunnel. So like I'm not really thinking about like the color palette and all that sort of stuff on my tiny little screen and stuff. So I'm gonna have to give it another look to think about the color stuff, because Birds of Prey, like as a comic, is more in the sort of Batman realm, but like a little bit more cheerful. But yeah, the Harley Quinn led part of it, you would think it would be like very bright and wacky. So yeah, I'm curious ultimately what they're gonna do, because sometimes a trailer can be misleading on what the end product will be like.
Right. So I am looking at the trailer again because I didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be talking out of turn. And I think I'm giving it back. There is definitely a bit more of a color palette here, but when they show some other things, it still feels... So again, this is me getting film nerdy. Films today are shot on digital rather than actual film.
Right.
And because of this, they lose the ability to have true blacks. Everything is just sort of shades of gray and very dark gray. And so I feel maybe that's the problem. So I think I'm going to take it back. I think there are definitely some interesting color choices. It's just there's a scene where she's skating behind a car, and when they're clearly shooting day for night, which means they're shooting during the daytime, and to make it look like nighttime, they use blue lights.
Right.
And then
like
they pull out some of the saturation.
Like old
And
Western movies would do that all the time, and it would be really obvious.
Right, and if you watch a movie like, say, Underworld, the entire Underworld series is painted blue.
Right.
And so I think it's the fact that I'm seeing some of these action scenes of her fighting people and running around, and the night scenes, and those are the ones where I was like, oh no, that looks so much like the majority of Suicide Squad, where it all just had that blue hue all over it, and it's like, guys, just knock it off, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's, again, I'm very... I can get very judgmental and picky, and I try real hard not to be. I try to look up to Kevin Smith when it comes to video game movies, in that who in the world ever thought that we would get a live-action Birds of Prey film, regardless of what the cast is?
I mean, high school me reading those comics when they were coming out certainly did not think so. Never in my wildest dreams. Even though we were already getting like X-Men movies, I think at the time, or Spider-Man movies. Yeah, I was not reading Birds of Prey being like, can't wait till they adapt this one.
Yeah, exactly. We have lived in a world to see a Justice League movie and multiple films about the Avengers that all kicked off because of Iron Man. People love Iron Man now. And as a comic book fan, I cannot tell you how ridiculous of a notion that is. Because it's ridiculous. Iron Man was like a C-list hero and was very few people's favorite character. There was a cartoon in the 90s that bumped up his popularity a bit because the toys were really cool. Because the character is tailor-made for action figures, right? Like, do you remember the Batman action figures where, for the life of you, you could never find a toy that just looked like Batman?
Yeah.
He was always colored something really weird and had some stupid accessories. And like this one, he's gold for some reason. Like, that makes sense with Iron Man because he had a million armors with different colors.
Well, because he's making his own toys for himself, you know?
Exactly. And so did Batman, but it's just they kept repainting the figure, and you could never actually find a Batman figure with the regular colors.
Yeah, I remember that because I wanted a Batman toy because I watched like the animated series, because I was about the right age for that when that came out, and like, yeah, I just wanted the Batman from that. And no, I had to get like Batman that looked like he was sort of fused with Terminator, because he had like metallic armor parts and stuff that didn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't know. But with Birds of Prey, I mean, is there something, as a fan, well, I mean, you said you read it, but you were a big fan of the Gail Simone run?
Yeah, and again, I haven't read it in like 15 years or something like that. So it's pretty vague now. But yeah, I remember really enjoying it back in the day because it took like this sort of, gosh, it's going to sound so reductive, but it's like if you take 90% Batman and then mixed in like 10% Charlie's Angels, that's kind of where the tone was.
Yeah.
So like the dark and grittiness was like broken up with the, more fun adventure kind of tone.
Plus, you had a talented female writer writing women,
Yes.
and that was a big thing for everybody.
And to be transparent, teenage boy me kind of appreciated that it was female characters being written by a woman, but I'm sure my teenage boy self kind of appreciated they're still being drawn by a guy for reasons I'm not proud of now, but hey, it is what it is.
Well, that's part of the thing that gets people into comic books.
Yeah, I mean the pulpy, that's the word I was trying to look for, like when I was talking about like Jim Lee's art style, Like I think that is kind of part of the like old school, at least, comics identity, is some of that pulpiness, regardless of whether you're talking about male or female characters.
Right. So I'm seeing you run into more of this poisonous gas.
Yeah, so
And now you are controlling the main character, and the other characters are AI, so they're running and grabbing the coal and stuff for you while you fight the main bad guys.
right. Yeah, so they'll either help me fight or they'll go pick up stuff and then I can swap between them.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so just like a behind the scenes look for anyone that was wondering why I had the game paused for a while. I was trying to, while we were talking about Birds of Prey, skim a guide real quick just so that I'm not like beating my head against the wall trying to figure out where to go next. And apparently somewhere in this cave is an exit that takes me to the next place, and I'm just not seeing it. I was thinking I had to like backtrack and find some gas mask or whatever to get through the poison. That doesn't seem to be what's going on.
I'm trying to look for it, because like at the top of the screen there, it looked like they were the golden egg things. I suppose that wasn't a thing for you to break through, because it'll show you on the map.
Right. You know what? I think I somehow just did not come through this one cave right here, because this is a checkpoint that's not activated until right now. So I somehow just missed a turn. I guess because I was so just enraptured in talking about comics and stuff.
Yeah. So were there any of the DC movies so far that did really hook you?
Man, so I have to say, like, DC movies have been so far, every time a DC, since I was mostly a DC fan when I was reading comics a lot, so every time I get pulled in to comic book movies, it's because of a DC movie, and then every time I get pushed away from them, it's a DC movie. So like, Batman and Robin got pushed away. Batman Begins got pulled back in. Man of Steel pushed away. Wonder Woman pulled back in. So it's just kind of been this cycle. So
I think I'm there with you. I maintain this for no particular reason. I have never seen Batman and Robin. And I say that as a massive Batman and especially a massive Robin fan. I have never seen that movie. I don't know why. I remember really enjoying Batman Forever because it was the first time since the 1966 Batman that we got a live-action Robin on screen. And I thought they did the costume pretty well because it looked like Batman's armor, except it was Robin's costume. I had the soundtrack on cassette tape.
wow.
Rocked out to Kiss from a Rose by Seal, and a Riddler rap by Method Man.
So I can't not think about Batman throwing batarangs every time I hear that Seal song.
Yeah, right?
I think, did they have like a promotional music video that was like scenes from the movie spliced together with the song? So there's like a big like swell in the music at one point, right as Batman releases a batarang from each hand at once. And I can't not see that every time I hear that song.
I don't know if it's both at once, because I think this is it was where he throws it and it hits the giant Riddler thing in the ceiling that explodes. If memory serves, it's the scene where he does a riddle to the Riddler, and the answer is, you're as blind as a bat, and then he hits a thing, and a special thing drops down inside of his cowl for him to see, and he uses the sonic, I think is what they called it, the sonic batarang. Yeah, Fuzzy Cow knows what's up. The sonic batarang, and he throws it, and it hits the thing. But yes, they absolutely had that music video. It's a thing I don't know that they do a ton anymore. I could be wrong, but that's when every big movie had to have a big tie-in song, and then they would do a music video that cut between the performer singing and clips from the film.
Did like Will Smith kind of end that, or like, because I feel like that's a trend that sort of died at the end of the
Men in
90s.
Black?
Yeah, like or really Wild Wild West, I think, kind of was the nail in the coffin on that one.
Desperado. All right.
It's a catchy song, though. I'm not going to deny
It
that.
is. I think maybe because he was in the film, right? He's the main star of the film and then doing the music video. I'm just trying to think of the last time I physically saw that happen, and I think it's just because so much of our stuff now doesn't get those big tie-ins, right? Like, we have musicals now, like The Greatest Showman.
Yeah, I think it's
And then you have things like, I don't know, Harry Potter. Well, there's not really... They didn't do pop songs at the end of every Harry Potter movie, sadly.
missed opera. Man, some good, like...
Think of how bad that would have been.
Oh, some
If at the end of
Hogwarts
every
rap.
Harry Potter movie, while they roll the credits, is you have a song by whatever the latest... Because it has to be, like, really music that completely ages the film.
Yeah. What would have been the... I guess it would have been, like, pop punk, maybe, for the first couple Harry Potter movies. Like, have some 41 singing
Right,
about
Avril
Hufflepuffs or whatever. Avril Lavigne, yeah.
Yeah, do a song, or if it's a song for that movie, so it's a completely different song, but she mentions, okay, yes, Data Air, but can you dance the hippogriff? Ma, 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 ma. That's fair.
So I'm sparing our audience the... sorry to cut you off just for a sec here. I'm sparing the audience my amateur voice acting for now, since this dialogue seems very perfunctory.
I mean, I'll take a character if you want me to take a character.
Let's see. I think this cutscene will just push through, because this is just the characters. And honestly, I would love to do that. I just think this cutscene is all them reiterating, like,
Right.
exposition from before about, in the last village we heard about the next village, and now they're like, oh, this is the village we talked about for 10 minutes before. Let's reiterate all those points, But if we get to a good dramatic moment, we'll do that.
I like how each person is very easily identifiable by the color of their hair.
Yes.
They also very, very well match to their outfits.
I mean, if you had pink hair, wouldn't you work that into your outfit?
I suppose, and if I have blue hair, I don't think I would have the choice to wear anything but blue.
But yeah, it's that classic anime thing where each character has a different hairstyle, and it somehow also reflects their personality or something, like, and is part of their outfit, and probably their character class.
Right. I dig it.
But yeah, I'm sorry, I cut you off there, but I just wanted to, for anyone that was like, what's happening now in the story, just know that the characters are...
Actually, they're here to watch you play a game, not to hear us talk, or me talk about comic books.
Data Error is saying very Sentai of them. Yeah, I know what you mean. It is kind of like, I guess Power Rangers is that Western touchstone of that thing where every character has a color, a like personality trope, and then some kind of thing about their job or their background that all are like way too cohesive for a real human being to be, like way too internally consistent.
I believe in this. I think this should be adapted into the real world. They do it on Star Trek, right? You see what color they're wearing, you know what they do. Power Rangers, everybody is like, all right, that's your color now. And it's like, they change color from time to time. but for the most part, that's your color. You wear clothing, and I think that would be fantastic. We should all just pick a color
Well,
that would make dressing ourselves easier.
and think about like, and granted, this could lead to all kinds of problematic things when I think about it, but like, you're having a bad day and you're like, I don't think I can deal with a lot of stress right now, and you see someone wearing like bright red and you're like, walking away from that guy. Oh, this guy in the pale blue, I think I'll go talk to him instead. He's obviously a chill guy, you know.
Right. Yeah. Earth tones. You see the guy wearing nothing but tan and beige, you know they're going to be easy to talk to.
That's a guy you can bring into like a stressful situation. When the one wearing like highlighter yellow, you know.
Yeah. He's the guy who'll get you into trouble.